When she casually held the folder up above her head, she accidentally discovered a secret hidden within the papers, classified NASA data. She tried to pretend she hadn't seen anything, but when she looked up, she realized she could use this hidden information to solve the difficult problem on the blackboard. So she climbed the ladder and began calculating the rocket's trajectory. In just a few hours, she solved the puzzle that had stumped the entire space agency. But instead of applause, she faced interrogation. The supervisor suspected she was a Soviet spy, because most of the critical information had been blacked out, making it impossible for even a genius to find the answer. That's when Catherine told the truth. She had seen the content by holding it up to the light. Once he understood what had happened, the supervisor realized she was a rare mathematical genius. He ordered that materials no longer be redacted and gave Catherine access to classified information. The next day, however, the supervisor was surprised to find Catherine's seat consistently empty, with no one knowing where she had gone.
Where the hell have you been? Everywhere I look, you're not where I need you to be. It's not my imagination. Now, where the hell do you go every day?
To the bathroom, sir.
To the bathroom. To the damn bathroom. For 40 minutes a day? What are you doing there? We're T-minus zero here. I put a lot of faith in you.
There's no bathroom for me here.
What do you mean there's no bathroom for you here?
There is no bathroom. There are no colored bathrooms in this building, or any building outside the West Campus, which is half a mile away. Did you know that?
It turned out there were no restrooms for black employees in the entire building. Every day, she had to run half a mile away just to use the bathroom. When Catherine finally voiced her frustration, she thought she would lose her job. To her surprise, the very next day, the supervisor publicly removed the colored sign from the restroom door in front of everyone. He didn't care about skin color, only about ability.
No more colored restrooms. No more white restrooms. Just plain old toilets.
No one could have predicted that this single act by the supervisor would help create a key figure who would change American space history. Catherine had shown remarkable mathematical talent from childhood. Her parents recognized this gift and sent her to the state's top school for black students. At just 9 years old, she was taking classes with high school students, and the math problems on the blackboard never stumped her. Even her teachers were amazed by her talent and believed she had unlimited potential. However, Catherine's life wasn't always smooth sailing. A failed marriage left her raising 3 children on her own. Fortunately, her computational skills landed her a decent position at the space agency, even though it was just in a cramped, humid basement. But this place brought together many black women like herself. In 1961, the Soviet Union's successful rocket launch put enormous pressure on America. NASA desperately needed to fast-track their rocket development. They had purchased a batch of computers, but before the equipment arrived, they urgently needed a mathematician. Surprisingly, no one in the entire white building could handle complex analytical geometry problems, so they turned to the colored computing group. Team leader Dorothy recommended Catherine because she could always handle complex data. That's how Catherine was temporarily transferred to NASA's East Wing, though her supervisor told her that black women's skirts had to be below the knee, and jewelry was limited to simple pearl necklaces. Her main responsibility would be writing research reports.
Your clearance. They've never had a colored in here before, Catherine. Don't embarrass me.
The supervisor's words made Catherine feel tremendous pressure, but she took a deep breath and mustered the courage to walk into the office. As soon as she entered, white colleagues mistook her for a janitor. She had no choice but to report to the secretary's office. When the secretary saw she was black, her attitude immediately became arrogant and condescending. But when the supervisor here reviewed her credentials, he didn't look down on her. Besides her regular duties, he also assigned her to double-check colleagues' calculations. However, the white team leader Paul resented this, and would deliberately black out important data before throwing the files to Catherine for review.
My numbers are spot on.
I will double check them, sir. No problem.
At that moment, Catherine suddenly needed to use the restroom. When she asked the secretary where it was, she was told they didn't know where the colored restroom was located. Left with no choice, she grabbed her files and rushed out of the office. But after searching the entire building, she couldn't find a restroom designated for black employees. In desperation, she had to run out of NASA and sprint half a mile to the West Wing to use the bathroom. Even running the whole way, it took her 30 minutes. In the restroom, she didn't dare waste a single moment. By the time she returned to the office, she had lost a full hour, and unfinished files were piling up like mountains. It wasn't until nightfall that she finally completed all her work. However, when she handed the files to the supervisor, he threw them in the trash without even looking. It wasn't because her work was flawed. The daytime data had simply become outdated. The supervisor's requirement was actually simple. See the essence through the numbers and think around these figures. They had to find answers before problems arose, or they would never make it off Earth. On the way home, her friend Dorothy began complaining that she hadn't been promoted to supervisor, simply because she was black. For 10 years, she had never been late, working diligently and without complaint. Now she was doing a supervisor's job every day but without the corresponding promotion or raise, which felt deeply unfair. Listening to Dorothy's frustrations, Catherine also opened up about her own feelings. She wasn't sure how much longer she could stay in her current office. Maybe 2 days, maybe a week before being demoted. When Catherine arrived home, it was already late at night, but she still couldn't rest. As a single mother, she had to bear all the heartache alone. At a community gathering, Catherine's friends introduced her to a promising match, tall, handsome Colonel Jim, who was reportedly once an accomplished pianist. Seeing their mutual attraction, the friends tactfully left them alone. However, when Jim learned that Catherine worked at NASA, his thinking remained stuck in the past. He felt such work would only exhaust women further. Jim's surprise made Catherine sense his bias against women.
If I were you, I'd quit talking right now.
I mean no disrespect.
I will have you know, I was the first Negro female student at West Virginia University Graduate School. On any given day, I analyze the manometer levels for air displacement, friction, and velocity, and compute over 10,000 calculations by cosine, square root, and lately analytic geometry by hand. There are 20 bright, highly capable Negro women in the West Computing Group, and we're proud to be doing our part for the country. So yes, they let women do some things at NASA, Mr. Johnson. And it's not because we wear skirts. It's because we wear glasses. Have a good day.
The demanding work kept Catherine constantly on edge, so coffee became her way of relieving stress. But when she reached for the coffee pot, everyone stared at her strangely. They couldn't tolerate sharing the same things with a black person. Catherine realized she had made a mistake and awkwardly returned to her seat. Though no one spoke, their looks said everything. The next day, she saw a smaller pot next to the original one, labeled colored. She was the only black person in the office, but she was already used to all this. Catherine endured the discrimination and picked up the coffee pot, only to find it contained no coffee prepared for the scientists. Faced with such blatant discrimination, she firmly believed in not getting angry over immediate obstacles. Keep pursuing excellence, and someday your talent will receive the recognition it deserves. Meanwhile, Paul continued giving her redacted data every day, making her work extremely difficult.
I cannot work on what I cannot see, Mr. Stafford. It's illegible.
Those numbers have already been confirmed by 2 engineers in this department and myself. This is more or less a dummy check.
Faced with Paul's obstructionism, Catherine found another way. She held the documents up to the light and discovered the hidden secrets. With the key information in hand, she solved the blackboard problem in just a few hours. Her white colleagues' faces showed complete amazement. They couldn't believe their eyes. A black woman had solved a problem that had stumped them for so long. Finally, Catherine earned the supervisor's respect. At a birthday party, Jim appeared once again. In the musical atmosphere, he invited Catherine to dance. He explained that perhaps because he'd been away too long, his communication wasn't as smooth as before, leading to his earlier misstep. Jim hoped Catherine would give him another chance.
I'm sorry, Catherine.
For what, Jim?
Underestimating you. And any other woman like you. Though I don't imagine there's many.
That's good practice right there.
Just as the two were dancing intimately, breaking news interrupted the music. The Soviet Union had successfully sent a person into space and completed orbital flight around Earth. This was a significant blow to America. They had lost this space race decisively. Under such enormous pressure, the supervisor called an emergency meeting overnight. He pointed out that the failure was due to the other side working harder. He refused to believe the Russians were technologically superior. Therefore, he decided to start working around the clock from that day forward, until they caught up. But just when everyone was frantically busy, the supervisor noticed Catherine was frequently absent.
Where is she?
At that moment, Catherine was rushing through the rain to the West Wing. In the restroom, she tried to use paper towels to dry off the rainwater, only to discover that the colored restroom wasn't equipped with such amenities. Even the soap dispenser was empty. Soaking wet, she felt utterly exhausted for the first time. When she returned to the office, she looked like a drowned rat. The supervisor couldn't tolerate Catherine's behavior any longer and demanded to know what she was doing every day. When he learned she was using the restroom, his anger erupted. What should take a few minutes was taking her an hour. He accused Catherine of deliberately slacking off during work, but the supervisor's accusation became the last straw for Catherine. She complained that there was no restroom designated for black people in this building.
I have to walk to Timbuktu just to relieve myself. And I can't use one of the handy bikes. Picture that, Mr. Harrison. My uniform, skirt below my knees, my heels, and a simple string of pearls. Well, I don't own pearls. Lord knows you don't pay colored enough to afford pearls. And I work like a dog, day and night, living off of coffee from a pot none of you want to touch. So, excuse me if I have to go to the restroom a few times a day.
Catherine's words filled the supervisor with shame. He walked over to the coffee pot and tore off the labels in front of all the employees. Early the next morning, he went to the colored restroom in the West Wing and personally removed the colored sign. When you become powerful enough, even rules will make way for you. If you can't change prejudice about skin color, then use your strength to shatter it. When Jim learned that Catherine had gotten sick from being caught in the rain, he visited her daily with nutritional supplements. Jim's care and sincerity won over the children. They joined hands like a family for pre-meal prayers. As they got to know each other better, Catherine accepted Jim. Through everyone's collective efforts, the rocket launch day finally arrived. They gathered around the television to witness this momentous occasion. As the countdown ended, the rocket soared into the sky. Everyone's hearts were in their throats until it successfully reached orbit, and they could finally breathe again. Their efforts had finally paid off and earned recognition from the president. Although the rocket had launched successfully, they couldn't let their guard down. With 2 astronauts scheduled to go to space next, they needed to calculate all the data in advance. That day, Catherine approached the supervisor, expressing her desire to calculate the Atlas rocket's trajectory ahead of time. This rocket was completely different from Freedom 7, requiring fresh calculations to ensure everything went perfectly. The supervisor realized this wasn't a simple task, but a challenge starting from scratch. He couldn't believe Catherine could handle it, as it required extremely precise calculations, like hitting a tiny target with a shotgun from 2,000 feet away. However, seeing Catherine's precise data reports and determined attitude, the supervisor finally agreed to let her try, though all data would need his approval. Paul was quite displeased with this decision. He deliberately told Catherine that computers couldn't sign reports and demanded she redo everything. Unfortunately, Freedom 7's second flight encountered setbacks. The landing point deviated from the calculated results, and the return capsule failed to land in the designated area. Thankfully, the rescue team arrived in time, saving the astronaut's life, but the space capsule sank to the bottom of the ocean and disappeared. The supervisor faced severe questioning from his superiors, making the astronauts scheduled for subsequent missions nervous. To avoid repeating mistakes, Paul explained the mission's critical aspects in detail. Although Earth's gravity constantly pulls on the space capsule, its speed is sufficient to counteract Earth's gravitational pull, allowing it to continuously orbit Earth without slowing down. They had to reduce speed at precisely the right moment to transition the capsule from an elliptical orbit to a parabolic trajectory. This step was crucial. If they slowed down too early, the capsule would burn up upon re-entry. If too late, it would escape Earth's gravity. Whether mass, speed, time, or distance, any change could affect the critical point and make all calculations worthless. Under enormous pressure, Catherine wanted to participate in meetings. Because time was of the essence, she was always behind on the latest developments, and every information update required recalculation.
Catherine, that's the job. When you asked for this assignment, so just calculate with what you have, or we'll find someone who can.
Her colleagues' words left Catherine with no comeback. She could only work with the data at hand. However, just as she submitted her calculations to leadership, she was told that the flight time had changed again 6 minutes earlier, the 4th time that day. Data changes meant she had to recalculate everything. Catherine grew frustrated, complaining that if she could attend meetings, she could get the latest data. Paul sternly refused, saying it was impossible because she was a woman, and a black woman at that. These words deeply hurt Catherine. She could only spend more time on calculations. The supervisor saw all of this. As expected, the data changed again, leading to another argument between them. The supervisor witnessed this scene, and Catherine seized the opportunity to express her thoughts. The rocket would launch in a few months, but the data was changing too rapidly for their mathematical calculations to keep up.
Pentagon briefings are not for civilians. It requires the highest clearance.
I feel like I'm the best person to present my
not gonna
calculations.
let this
with
go,
that.
are you?
No, I am not.
And she is a woman. There is no protocol for a woman
Okay,
attending
I
these
get that
meetings.
part, Paul. But within these walls, who makes the rules?
You, sir, you are the boss. You just have to act like one, sir.
Upon entering the meeting room, Catherine felt everyone's strange looks. Facing so many high-level officials made her somewhat nervous. The meeting focused on discussing the landing area. The military wanted to narrow the range to within 20 square miles to ensure safe recovery of the space capsule. The supervisor suddenly asked what the rocket's orbital speed was. This caught Paul off guard as he scrambled to find the answer. Catherine answered without hesitation, 17,544 miles per hour. When the military asked if they could calculate the critical point, Paul replied that theoretically it was possible, but they were clearly unsatisfied with this theoretical response. Under pressure from all sides, the supervisor chose to trust Catherine. He handed her a piece of chalk, gesturing for her to give it a try. Catherine confidently walked to the blackboard. She had never doubted her computational abilities. She calmly worked through the calculations on the board, writing out the answer in just 2 hours. Her talent impressed everyone present.
Okay, so that puts your landing zone at 5.0667 degrees north, 77.3333 degrees west. Right here. Give or take 20 square miles.
I like your numbers.
Thank you.
Of course, this was based on the assumption that the space capsule could precisely enter the return point. How to ensure this was still being explored? The supervisor reluctantly went to the computer room they had been preparing for so long. With the rocket launch imminent, massive calculations had to rely on this machine. Staff told him the machine had just been calibrated. Many people didn't know how to operate it, and they needed numerous programmers to input cards. Dorothy therefore received a temporary transfer order, but she couldn't bear to leave the black women here. Personnel told her she was the only one being transferred for now, others would remain unchanged. After the rocket launched successfully, the black computing group would be disbanded. This clearly wasn't what Dorothy wanted. She stated bluntly that if she couldn't bring those women with her, she wouldn't accept the assignment. Besides, the machine needed many operators, and her women were all capable. Eventually, Dorothy convinced leadership. She led the computing group out of the damp, dark basement into a spacious, bright office. Though this was only a temporary transfer, they believed they would work there long-term in the future. Meanwhile, Catherine encountered trouble. When transitioning the space capsule from elliptical to parabolic orbit, there was no existing mathematical formula to apply. While launch and landing calculations were fine, without this conversion, the return capsule might remain stranded in orbit, unable to return.
Maybe it's not new math at all.
It could be old math. Something that looks at the problem numerically and not theoretically. Math is always dependable.
For you, it is.
Euler's method.
Euler's method.
Yes,
That's ancient.
but it works. It works numerically.
Catherine immediately returned to the original computing group and found the dust-covered book. She input data according to the formulas in the book, and as she expected, successfully calculated the critical data. Additionally, since it was her birthday, Catherine went home early. Jim's appearance instantly brought some tension. Holding his family's heirloom ring, he knelt on one knee and formally proposed in front of the children. Catherine was thrilled, and before Jim could even speak, eagerly said yes.
I do.
I'd ask you yet.
Hurry up.
After 5 unmanned flight tests, the space agency confirmed that the new computers could handle all tasks. That day, the supervisor found Catherine. Due to the unmatched computing power, they no longer needed human computers. Technological progress was like a double-edged sword, bringing tremendous change while causing many to lose their jobs. Catherine had to leave temporarily. The supervisor was powerless to change this, and felt regret at being unable to keep her. To thank Catherine for her contributions, the secretary presented her with an exquisite pearl necklace on behalf of the supervisor, quietly telling her it was carefully selected by the supervisor's wife. Clearly, Catherine had earned everyone's respect through her abilities. After exactly 3 years and 2 months of preparation, the rocket launch day finally arrived. However, just hours before launch, the supervisor discovered a problem. Today's landing coordinates didn't match yesterday's. Most troubling was their uncertainty about whether yesterday's data was wrong or today's was incorrect. He had to inform the astronaut of this emergency situation, who also expressed concerns.
Let's get the girl to check the numbers.
The girl.
Yes, sir.
You mean Catherine?
Yes, sir. Smart one. I mean, she says they're good. I'm ready to go.
The astronaut's words made the supervisor realize the gravity of the situation. He immediately assigned an assistant to find Catherine. Not daring to delay, the assistant grabbed the files and rushed to the West Wing computing group. Catherine had walked this path countless times in high heels, while the assistant was already sweating profusely on his first trip. Catherine immediately began calculating upon receiving the materials, knowing this would determine the mission's success or failure. The launch site was already crowded with people, and the astronaut was in position. Now they were waiting for Catherine's results. Just as everyone was anxiously waiting, Catherine finally completed her calculations and rushed to the control center. However, she still faced cold discrimination. At that moment, Catherine understood that no matter how excellent she was, she couldn't change some people's prejudices. Just as she was leaving in disappointment, the supervisor pushed open the door and held up his badge, signaling her to enter. Then in her presence, the supervisor announced the correct coordinates to the astronaut.
We can confirm the go-no-go point for re-entry is 16.11984 degrees latitude, minus 165.2356 degrees longitude. The launch window is a go. The landing coordinates match.
Well, that is very good news, Al. It's a little hard to trust something you can't look in the eyes.
That's right, Colonel. Catherine did manage to calculate a few decimal points further than that hunk of metal.
Well, I will take every digit you got. Be sure to thank her for me. Gentlemen, let's launch this rocket.
Good luck, Friendship 7.
Godspeed, Langley.
Accompanied by the countdown, the rocket soared into the sky. After successfully reaching the designated orbit, everyone finally relaxed, but Catherine remained tense, not daring to leave for even a step. 10 hours later, the rocket safely landed at the coordinates she had calculated, and the weight finally lifted from her heart. While everyone was cheering and celebrating, Catherine quietly turned to leave. The supervisor called out to her once again.
Nice work.
You too, Mr. Harrison.
So, you think we can get to the moon?
We're already there, sir.
Through her solid abilities, Catherine was ultimately granted an exception to remain with the launch team. While achieving career success, Catherine also entered into a happy marriage with Jim. Meanwhile, Dorothy welcomed new responsibilities. She was no longer a programmer, but was promoted to become the first black department supervisor. Catherine finally gained her colleagues' recognition. Even Paul, who had once looked down on her, personally poured her coffee as a sign of respect. This proved that all respect stems from one's own abilities. In the years that followed, she continued her computational work, handling calculations for Apollo 11's moon landing and other space-related missions. To recognize her outstanding contributions to aviation, NASA named a computing building the Katherine G. Johnson Building in 2016, and awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom at age 97. The three mountains blocking black female scientists were first, skin color, second, gender, third, the combination of both. But she earned respect through ability, courageously denounced injustice, and defeated arrogance and prejudice through brilliant achievement. She was a driver of progress and a true hero. When the light of fairness penetrated the barriers of discrimination, from initially facing deliberately obscured data as harassment to having her calculations amaze and convince everyone, from initially standing shoulder to shoulder with black women in the basement to contributing her strength to the space race, from childhood talent shining like stars to becoming a legendary light in the aerospace world, this was not merely a display of her abilities, but a testament to her transformation. In this world, no effort goes to waste, and no success is accidental. No one's life is smooth sailing. Those who hold bouquets have all walked through thorns to get there. We often say there's no standard answer to the path of success. Everyone writes their own footnote. Of course, you can also choose to put on boxing gloves and fight with all your might. No matter how muddy water becomes, with enough settling it will become crystal clear. No matter how slow-witted a person may be, with sufficient effort they can still rewrite their destiny.